What's up guys? In this video I'm going to be making two charcuterie boards, one using my homemade Fractal wood burner and one using the Lightning Box from Lynchburg wood burning. I'm going to take this not flat piece of sugar maple, I'm going to make it flat, and then I'm going to make it not flat, and then I'm going to make it flat again. I'm going to show how these two burners work. I will be using two different methods for cleaning the pieces and then two different techniques for finishing the pieces. This video is meant for educational purposes only, and I do not recommend anyone trying Fractal wood burning at home. Stay tuned to see how I made these pieces. Alright, so here we have two pieces of sugar maple. This is my first time working with this wood, but it's literally just like any other piece of maple. But I picked this wood because there's no crazy grain pattern or anything that would be distracting from the burns. I wanted you to be able to see clearly the differences in the burns. So first things first, just getting this piece flattened. I used the drum sander and the drum sander was too slow, so I switched over to the planer. Then the planer was giving me chip out, so I went back to the drum sander. And I've been getting comments that I slam the wood too much, so I've been slamming the wood more. It's not gonna hurt the wood, so if it makes somebody upset though, I'll definitely throw it around a little more. And now I am sanding the wood to 120 grit with my random orbit sander. I like to do this after surfacing the wood, just to kind of like rough up the surface a little bit, get it all evenly sanded. I feel like the wood will burn better if I do this. I don't know if it actually makes a difference or not though. So I always lay down a rubber mat anytime I'm burning, just an extra layer of protection from the wood to ground. And then here is my homemade Fractal wood burner from a microwave transformer, a Deadman switch. Got it on Amazon. It's only like 10 bucks. You need to have one if you're Fractal wood burning. And then here is the Lightning Box from Lynchburg wood burning. Shout out to Lynchburg wood burning. Kevin and Don actually sent me this unit for free. I believe this unit was $1,000 and they have like an $800 one as well. I believe the only difference is you get the clamps, like the alligator clamps and a hand probe. I would just go with the cheapest one that has high output and the little probes because I use those the most. Those are definitely the easiest to use. I don't see any reason to get the handheld probe or the alligator clamps unless you want that specifically, but the high output is absolutely necessary because even with the high output it's still a little bit of a slow burn. So after I soak the wood in the water baking soda solution, I set up my homemade Fractal wood burner. I always hook up the leads and the Deadman switch before I plug it in. This video is meant for educational purposes only, and I do not recommend anyone trying Fractal wood burning at home. So normally starting off a burn, it will kind of take a while to start a path it wants to follow. And then once it gets going, the burning process will speed up. This homemade Fractal wood burner is quite a bit faster than the Lightning Box. And the patterns that it burns are deeper. The Lightning Box, you'll see, is a little bit more detailed than my homemade Fractal wood burner. But as I burn, I move the clamps around to get the pattern that I want. I try to get the whole piece burned pretty evenly, and I always soak the entire piece. If you soak just part of the piece, the baking soda actually changes the color of the wood a little bit, and I want all the colors to be consistent. So as each burn gets to a point that I like it at, I'll move the clamps, and if the burn kind of fizzles out, I'll just spray it with a water bottle. And so for this piece that I burned with my homemade Fractal wood burner, I'm going to be cleaning it with water and a brass brush. This is a method I used to use, and I still use if it's a wall art piece or a piece I don't care if the wood starts to warp a little bit. This was the piece that was not flat to begin with, and you'll see from me spraying water on it here, the moisture actually causes the wood to warp again a little bit. Basically, you spray it down, clean it off with a brass brush, and then spray it down with water again. It's definitely the easiest cleaning method. And after I'm done cleaning it, I'll wipe off the excess water, and then I'll lay the piece wet side down, face down, and put weight on it to help ensure that it doesn't warp as much. I've actually done that with dry pieces of wood that are a little bit warped. I'll wet them down and put weight on them, and sometimes that'll help the wood go back to being straight. So for this other piece of wood, I'm going to be using the Lichtenberg wood burner, and I'm going to try out the alligator clamp on the one side. They are nice, but the problem is that the clamps aren't big enough to bite on most pieces of wood. You turn the voltage up all the way, you turn the device on, and you step on the pedal. Pretty simple, very similar to the DIY Fractal wood burner. You can see the pattern is definitely more detailed, and it does burn slightly less deep. I didn't show it, but I struggled for a while just to get this piece to start to burn. A lot of times when I'm having a hard time getting a good burn going, I'll, obviously wet the piece again, add more baking soda water, and then I'll get out a fan. And I don't really know why, but it seems like having a fan on it helps the burn go faster. So that's what I did here. I just set up a fan on it, and it seemed to be helping a little bit. And this is another method I use. I'll just screw a little drywall screw into the wood and attach a clamp to that. And then I ended up just switching to the probes. Like I said, these probes are really nice. I definitely prefer using these over the clamps, and to be honest, I haven't even used the handheld. I don't really have any interest in holding the hot lead in my hand. So I will leave a link to this Fractal wood burner in the description. It's definitely, I don't want to say safer, but there's more fail safes on it. Like, you can't use it without the dead man switch. And I think that that's 100% essential. If you want to try fractal wood burning, you need to have the dead man switch. And if you set the dead man switch like 6 foot away from where you're working, I don't see how there's any way you're going to be able to get your hands in there while the piece is burning. So this is just a quick example of the Lightning Box arcing. Although this device is set up a little bit safer than a DIY fractal wood burner, it will still arc. And just for reference, burning with my homemade fractal wood burner took about 10 minutes, and to burn this piece with the Lightning Box took about a half hour. So it does take quite a bit longer. After I finished burning this piece, instead of spraying it with water, all I did was flip it over and put weight on it. So I just left it without cleaning it off. This is a method I've been using more recently just because it doesn't cause the wood to warp. It's just a little bit more time consuming to get the piece clean. After leaving the wood to dry for 24 hours, I take the weight off and flip them over, and you can really tell how much cleaner the one is that I sprayed with water. Then I take my nylon wheel on a drill and a shop vac and clean Lightning Box piece. This method is definitely a lot more messy. It still does a good job to get the piece clean. And so now I just use 150 grit to get the rest of the debris off of the piece. We already sanded to 120 before the burn, and the burn itself was kind of like a water pop. So not only are you cleaning the piece, you're also getting the piece ready for the finish sanding. You see that? I think that turned out pretty good. Here's the other piece that was already cleaned with water. And then I'll always do the same thing with the nylon wheel. It doesn't need it as much, but there are some ashes embedded deep in the burns. And then same thing here, I'll sand it with 150 grit. So even though I put the weight on the wood and laid it flat, it still did warp on me. And at this point, I was thinking I was just going to make that one a wall art piece and make this one a charcuterie board, but you'll see what happens. And here I have pure ocosilic acid, also known as wood bleach. This stuff does a really good job of cleaning the wood, and it kind of brings it back to its original color before applying the baking soda. I'm going to be doing this on just the piece that I burned with the Lightning Box. So the only time I'll really use this stuff is when I'm having a really hard time getting the burn marks off of the wood. This piece wasn't too bad, but you could still see after using it how the colors change a little bit, and some of like the yellowing around the burns will go away, and you get more of a consistent color throughout the piece. So basically I'll just apply a layer using a finishing sponge, let it dry, and then put another layer on. So you could see as this piece dries, it ends up a little bit whiter than the piece that I used for my homemade fractal wood burner that I sprayed off with water. So this piece was a little bit more dirty than the other piece before the wood bleach, and now it's very clean and it has a very consistent color to it. To fill in the burns, I'm going to be using the Epoxy Resin Store Super Gloss Tabletop Epoxy with Silver Pearl pigment from Black Diamond Pigments. This is a 2-part epoxy 1-to-1 ratio. And here's a little tip for stirring tabletop epoxy. When you have a small amount like this, it's easiest to do it with a popsicle stick and just attach a vice grip to the end of it so you have better grip for stirring. As far as actually pouring the epoxy, there is no real fancy method here. I try to fill in the deep parts first, and then after I have everything pretty much filled in, I'll just take a Bondo spreader and spread the epoxy around until the entire piece is covered. If you fill in just the burns and around the burns, then it doesn't actually fill into the wood grain. So I try to make sure I cover the entire piece in epoxy and obviously wipe off the entire piece. And by the time you sand it down, you won't be able to tell that there was ever epoxy there, but the epoxy will fill into the wood grain and once again just give you a consistent color, which is always what I want to end up with. When I first started making these fractal pieces, I used to spend way too much time trying to make sure that the burns were filled in completely. When I would show these pieces to customers, they would always try to feel the texture from the burns. And so I've kind of decided that filling in the burns completely is totally pointless and a waste of time. Unless, of course, if a customer asks specifically that they want the piece to be completely flat, I'll do it then. But I've never heard a customer complain about the texture of the wood with the burns in there. After I cleaned up the mess and let the pieces dry for about 48 hours, I sanded them to 180 grit. And this will remove all of that excess epoxy on the wood itself. So this is the piece that was cleaned with water that was warped, and now it's pretty much completely flat again. What happened is the moisture that was still in the wood before completely left and caused the wood to go back to being completely flat. So after cutting the end grain off these pieces and adding a round over on the edges, I cleaned them off with mineral spirits, and I'm getting ready to do my first finish here, which I'm just using Rubio monocoat for. If you guys have seen woodworking videos on YouTube, you've seen people use Rubio monocoat. I'm not going to go into great detail here. Just spread it on and use a Scotch-Brite pad to buff it in. Very easy to use. It's a very nice looking finish, very durable, but in my opinion, kind of boring and doesn't really pop out at you. So for this other piece, by the way, this is the one that I used my homemade fractal wood burner to burn and cleaned off with water. But for this piece, I'm going to be using shellac and oil-based polyurethane. For the shellac, I buy pure shellac flakes and then mix it with denatured alcohol. And then I will pour the concentrated shellac into another container and add denatured alcohol to make the cut as thick or as thin as I'd like. And I just go by feel. I don't measure anything. To be honest with you guys, there's a lot that goes into this finish. Although it's not complicated to do, there's just a lot to explain on how I do this finish. If this is something you guys are interested in seeing a full video on, please just let me know in the comments and I'd be happy to make a full video on this. So I've been looking to upgrade my bandsaw for about a year, and I finally found a pretty good deal on one on Facebook Marketplace. I drive out to pick it up. It's an older gentleman, and he's retiring from woodworking, and he's showing me all these incredible pieces he's made. And I asked him, I was like, what do you use for a finish? These pieces are incredible. I've never seen anything like this before. And he absolutely refused to tell me what he used for a finish. I mean, I only asked him a couple of times, but he said he's not even going to give me a hint. It's his secret, and he's going to take it to the grave. Part of me understands, you know, you don't want other people using whatever secret finish you have, you know, if it could hurt your sales or whatever, but this guy was retiring from woodworking, and I am a aspiring woodworker, and I want to learn as much as I can. I just thought that was kind of a bummer. That's why I always want to show what little knowledge I have, I love to try to share it with you guys. And I actually learned this method from a chiropractor that I was seeing for a little while, and he was more than happy to show me all of his tips and tricks for finishing. And I had never even heard of doing shellac with oil-based polyurethane, and he told me, he's like, take as long as you need to put it on, do multiple layers, really take your time while you're applying it. So that's what I've always done, and it takes a lot of patience, but you can get really nice finishes like this if you just take your time. I also just want to say that I got some really good suggestions from you guys in the comments about using an epoxy finish on an end grain end table that I did a couple of videos ago. You guys came up with all kinds of good ideas to help avoid excess bubbles in the finish, and I'm definitely going to be trying those out next time I go for an epoxy finish. So this is after the first coat. I sanded the back of the piece down to 320 grit and the top of the piece at 800. I just do a very light sanding here just to scuff up the surface a little bit, and then I apply another coat of finish. And after this coat, I did apply a third coat, and after that, everything was looking perfectly smooth. So here I'm applying N3 nano coat ceramic coating to this piece. I was using Black Forest ceramic coating before, and I had a end table piece that I finished, and I actually got a scratch in it, and someone actually bought it off of my website, and then I noticed the scratch. So I had to sand the entire piece down and then refinish it, and then I went with the N3 nano coat ceramic coating because as far as I could tell, it seems to be a much higher quality product. And here I am just installing little handles and rubber stoppers for the bottom of the pieces so they don't get scratched up. And with that, these pieces are all finished up. Definitely let me know which piece you like better, which burn you think looks cooler, and then which finish you think looks better. Personally, I like the burns from the Lightning Box and the finish of the shellac and oil-based polyurethane. But let me know what you guys think, and please give this video a like, and feel free to comment whatever you like. I don't know if you guys have noticed by now, but I never delete a comment, even if you're hating. I think it's good to have open dialogue in the comment section, so if you hate this, please leave a comment too. Thank you guys so much for watching.